All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is June 15th. It is 6 p.m. We are reconvening from our budget workshop. We're going to pause for a minute for a technical difficulty. We have a green light. All right, we are meeting here at the Clearlake City Hall Council Chambers, located 14050 Olympic Drive in Clearlake, California. Again, it is 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Overton? Here. Councilmember Kramer?
Here.
Councilmember Slotin?
Here.
Vice Mayor Claffey?
Here.
Mayor Purdock?
Present. Just to say, Mr. Fleur, do we need to report out for the budget workshop? No actions taken? Thank you. Councilmember Overton, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. If you wouldn't mind, just remain standing. I just would like to acknowledge and recognize that our community has lost a few of its outstanding members. One in particular, though, I would like to remember tonight is a former volunteer firefighter at the Lake County Fire Department. Captain Ronald Boyd was unfortunately and tragically killed in a motorcycle accident along with his beautiful wife a few days ago. He was a very active member of the Lake County, former Lakeshore Fire Department, responding to calls for service day and night, weekends, ultimately moving on to the Department of Forestry, where he promoted to captain recently in the Humboldt fire, or the Humboldt area. So a great loss for our community, and I'd just like you to keep his family in prayer if you would. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Moving on, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Overton and a second by Councilmember Kramer. All those in favor signify by saying aye or nay.
Aye.
All right, we have one more.
Melissa, could you have a quick assistance here?
My meeting, so I don't have a voting thing. I normally do. What did I do? You'll have to come save me. Did I go in the wrong way? See, that's one that wouldn't let me email to start with. Yeah. Okay, so I think I will take it there. Yeah, that's the one I didn't get into because it was. Thank you.
Did you vote?
You got it.
Okay. That was, I couldn't get into that or it kept rejecting it out.
Oh, I see.
And so I went in a different way, so didn't realize it made a difference, so. Now I
Okay,
do. Now I
we're
do.
good.
I'm waiting for the city clerk to rejoin us.
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you very much. Moving on to presentations, item F1. Lieutenant Peterson, do you have a report? This presentation is of the June adoptable dogs. If you're sitting on the aisle, please be careful. We're not sure how this may turn out. Oh, we don't have any. Oh, we do have a pet. Okay, good.
He's been here before. Or she.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Who do you have with you today?
This is Paige. She is a 2-year-old American Pit Bull Terrier mix. She's a very playful girl, and she will keep you entertained 24/7. She always has a ball in her mouth and is a pro at playing fetch. She will go all day long if you let her. She also really, really loves water. Her favorite thing to do is dig in the pool, and she'll do that for hours. She prefers to be the only pet in the home, so no other dogs or cats for this one, please. She also enjoys one-on-one cuddle time just as much as playing fetch and playing in the water. She gives great snuggles. She is spayed, microchipped, and up to date on all vaccinations. If you are interested in Paige or any other dogs at the shelter, please come on down. We are located at 6820 Old Highway 53, and we're here every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing your pet in.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, what's your update?
All right. Guess I'll have to hold that. Currently, the intake for the year is 111 dogs came into the shelter. 106 have left the shelter, which 41 were sent to rescue, 41 returned to owners, 19 were adopted, and as before, 1 was euthanized, which hasn't changed, and then 4 died or were lost in the shelter care. Live release rate is 99.58%. Current shelter population is 60 dogs. They had a dog that had some puppies, so it went from 58 up. There's 11 cats for veterinary care. There are 4 dogs and 2 cats sent to veterinary clinic, and the return of regular schedule on June 28th at the Clearlake Veterinary Clinic.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Very good. Moving on to item G, public comment. Public comment is a time for any member of our public or visitor to the community to come and address the council on any matter not on tonight's agenda. Remember that we do have to uphold by the Brown Act, so we are not allowed to respond or answer questions, though you may pose them. If we see an opportunity, we might direct you to staff to hopefully answer your question at a later time. At this time, I have no request for public comment, but if there's someone here that would like to address the council, now is your time. You have 3 minutes. Please step forward, state your name, and if you're a resident of the city of Clearlake. Now you did it.
Uh-oh, you broke it.
Good evening, guys. How are you? Nice to see everybody. I just had a question, basically concerned about the 4 animals that, thank you. Thank you so much. Perfect. About the 4 animals that died in the shelter, only 1 was euthanized, which was discussed here before, which is only, it's logical that that's got to happen. What date does that cover, that report that he just gave about how many?
As I just indicated, ma'am, we can't answer your questions, but if you'd like to talk.
Anybody can
Ma'am, if you would just meet with
Okay.
the lieutenant that gave the report, he could answer your questions.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you,
Thank you very
guys.
much. If anyone else wanting to address council, this is your time. Madam Clerk, anyone on Zoom? Just a second, sir. Anyone on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Don Calaley, and I just moved to Clearlake, and
Welcome.
thank you very much. And I live in a house, and there's vacant lots on both sides of me, and I'm just wondering, how do I go about getting who do I ask to get the lots cut down, the grass?
Okay.
Where do I go for that?
Yeah, you could speak with Mr. Lambert, our code enforcement officer supervisor, who's also here sitting next to Lieutenant Peterson.
Okay.
right here. He could probably give you address, or you can contact the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce. They, I believe they have a list of people that can provide that service.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
You bet. Anyone else wishing to address the council at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we will move to the next item, which is our consent agenda. Do we have any changes or wish to pull an item? Anyone on the council?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any public comment on item on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action. I have a motion by Councilmember Slotin
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Kramer. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye. Any opposed?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
Thank you. Now, moving on to the public hearing. Section I-5, public hearing to consider the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision of April 25th, 2023 for the approval of the environmental analysis CEQA 22-205 in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act and Conditional Use Permit CUP 2022-16 for the Burns Valley Development Project located at 14885 Burns Valley Road, Clear Lake, California 95422, further described as assessor's parcel number 026-40. This is, we are reconvening on this item. It was heard at our prior city council meeting. Mr. Flora or Mr. Jones, would you like to get us up to speed?
Sure, Mr. Mayor and council members. So at the last meeting, there was, a number of pieces of information provided. The most important, I think, there was an errata prepared by our council, and so we do have a red line copy of the mitigation monitoring plan based on that errata. And then the one additional thing was the offer last week of being able to the COI voluntarily providing monitors at their expense for areas that were outside the what we consider sensitive areas based on the facts in this case. So we do have the language related to that. I can pass this out, and then I know that Mayor Purdock and Vice Mayor Claffey met with the COI Tribal Council earlier this week. So maybe you can provide a report on that. And then just a bit ago, we did receive an additional letter from the COI that was forwarded to your email. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it or not, but I did print out a few hard copies that we could.
If you could pass those out, Mr. Flora. I didn't have a chance to get that. That is, we were encouraged, Chairman Beltran had offered monitoring of the site for, I believe, some surface artifacts that possibly had been identified. Vice Mayor and I met with the COI. They rescinded that and were not able to do that. So we are back to this hearing. I'd like to thank Ms. Robinson for helping to facilitate that. And unfortunately, we have what appears to be quite a bit of material to review. Mr. Jones, as I recall, we had closed public comment on this item and had reconvened for deliberation. Is that your recollection?
It is, and you referred to it as public comment. It actually was the public hearing. So we're going to,
sorry.
We postponed the public hearing, continued until today's date. So I think you should open the public hearing or resume it, and we'll go from there.
Okay, at this point, are we able to, do we need to resume for additional testimony?
Yes.
Okay, and is that testimony to initiate with from the city staff or the plaintiff?
I mean, I don't think city staff have anything additional to
Anything to
provide. I
add?
mean, the errata document that was handed out, or the mitigation monitoring plan, the only thing new on that, if you look at the last page, is the specific language of the mitigation measure related to voluntary providing monitoring. The rest of it was all provided in the information last week. So, you know, I think we would just be available for questions from the council. We do have our council on Zoom, and I believe Dr. White might be on Zoom as well, if needed, so.
Ms. Robinson, if I could I call you to the podium, please? You handed us, you handed us this document to review. Could you give us kind of a high-level summary of what we're seeing here? It should be on.
There we go.
Okay, oops.
Okay. Yes, good evening. Thank you for meeting with us on Monday with tribal leadership. So your comment letter from today essentially addresses the new materials and events from the last hearing, so we're all up to date, right? And so it just writes down that there was a misunderstanding about we were not trying to offer to pay for tribal monitoring on the project during construction. Chairman Beltran was trying to reiterate the offer to pay for monitoring and cultural resources survey on the site because it had been disked to resurvey it. So I think he thought that's what you were asking. It honestly was confusing. You saw after the hearing, I was thinking, okay, we're going in this direction. So we got that cleared up. We also stated at the hearing that, you know, that kind of thing requires a vote of tribal council. Just like you as mayor, you would not make these decisions without talking to your council and voting. So same thing for how this government works. So we've clarified that. We've also addressed the 41 pages of materials which were provided at the hearing. So we have a very strong disagreement as to whether the substantial evidence standard under the fair argument has been met here. That's legalese, but what it means in plain English is we have lots of evidence. We've been giving the city meaningful evidence since February of 2022. We heard once again, you know, last week that the city did not think there was the evidence, so we've spent the last week since the hearing was reopened. This was not some grand plan, but since the door was open, you know, it's our job to walk through it. So since we heard so strongly that the city still does not think our evidence is sufficient, we went back into our records and we've provided you with more evidence. So the key documents are in the binders in front of you. One of my colleagues, Nav, will bring up a printed binder for you of evidence, and we've also submitted for the Tribal Cultural Resources confidential appendix, Robert Geary's consultation file for this project, which has some very interesting material in it, including the fact that I just recently discovered the city was actually paying for tribal monitoring on the entire project site during phase 1 of this project. So if y'all could just go back to what you were doing anyway, and we have receipts, like literal receipts of, you know, the invoices and so on for that. That's all in the record now. We've also added to the record materials such as the reports. No, Dr. White's not here. Dr. White, his reports cite other cultural and archaeological reports. We've given you those actual reports because they cite, for example, Mr. Geary's lineal descendancy. So when we say it's oral history of evidence of what tribal cultural resources are here and why it's important, just so it's very clear to everybody, his great-great-grandfather spoke to Mr. Giffords, who's an archaeologist, who wrote it down. Dr. White, the city's expert, says, here's what's here based on Giffords' report, interviewing Robert's great-grandfather. So we've tried to put evidence like that in the record to make it clear when we say it's oral history as evidence. We're getting it from the same people your expert's relying on, except with the addition that he has the speaks the language and has the cultural context to interpret that information more fully. I think those are the main points. Bill, am I missing anything? No, comment letter? Okay. Yeah, so that's what's in the comment letter. That's what we'll provide here today. And then if you'll give us the grace of giving us 30 minutes this time like we did last time, we're here again to explain again, and hopefully tell our story even better so that you hear it this time. So
Thank you,
we
Ms.
would
Robinson.
appreciate that opportunity if you can do it.
Let me ask for a point of order, Mr. Jones.
I mean, I think it's within the mayor's discretion. If there's new information that wasn't presented last time, certainly have.
Is this new information or a revisit of what's been presented?
We're not going to just say the same thing. It's similar points, but told with more detail. And also there's some new information as well. So we'd appreciate the time if you can.
Well, yeah, in the interest of cooperation and a spirit of, common interest, please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Been having some trouble with that.
Yeah, it's all right. How's this? Okay. This, you don't have something that's going to fall off of here. All right. Good evening. How is everybody doing? I'm Dino Beltran. I am the Vice Chairman of the Koi Nation of Northern California. As you all know, we're a sovereign nation. We operate as a government. As Holly stated, everything has to be voted on and decided upon, just like the way you folks operate your government. We've been here on this land, including the Burns Valley Sport Complex, for instance, time immemorial. We have 2 known sites there, Kulai and Kolono Padai. Have been submitted to the Native American Heritage Commission 8 years ago as sacred sites. We have not told you no. We want this to happen. But from a moral standpoint, and from an environmental and social justice issue here, this is not just a CEQA issue. It's an environmental justice issue, a social issue, it's a cultural issue, it's a religious freedom issue. So with that, I would like the public to know that we're behind this project. We are going to start reaching out to you so you understand us, because we're not getting through here. We're going to reach out to you. We're going to invite you to come and visit with us so you understand our emotional standpoint to this issue. We support this project. We have not said no. We want them to follow the law. There's also a moral aspect to it. Integrity, lacking. All this right here, temporary. It's temporary.
Mr. Beltran, if you could address the council, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, with that, and moving forward, we would love to go ahead and get your addresses, get your numbers, so you can understand what we're talking about here.
Address the council, Mr.
Well, I'm doing everybody.
I understand that, but we're the trier of fact tonight. So we appreciate
what?
we are the trier of fact tonight, like a
Okay.
judge,
Okay.
hearing your case.
Okay. So we're very grateful that a date has been set for training after a year of asking for it. Very grateful for that. It's about time. That'll be on June 30th. What's the matter?
I'm listening, sir.
Okay. So I'm glad that you've got your consultant doing that in tandem with us and our representative. We have invited the other tribes. The other tribes are willing to be here. I forgot to get you on that, Alan. Lisa can forward that to you. She responded. She was happy that we did that. So at the end of the day, just want to let you know, as Holly has stated, we are not going to pay for monitoring. You know, you're paying for monitoring for plumbers to be there. I mean, you're paying for plumbers to be there in their capacity. You're paying for electricians to be there in their capacity, our capacity, and all the training and everything we've spent money-wise for our people to be on board in a professional manner to respect the rights of our ancestors is set forward. So I ask you to take advantage of that, of our expertise, because we are just going to keep where we are. So at the end of the day, I hope you reconsider, because this isn't a legal issue so much as it is a moral issue, because I'll guarantee you what, if I had an idea that your ancestors might be buried in a certain area, I'm going to do everything possible to make sure that they would be handled by the right people, by you and your people, to make sure they would be handled with the utmost of integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beltran.
Hello, Weehan Rob Ikoibak. My name is Rob Morgan. I'm a resident here in Lake County. I'm also a member of Koi Nation. I am Koi. And again, I'm here to tell a little bit of my story. And last time I started fumbling around a little bit because I started thinking of everything, of all our history. And I really can sit up here for hours and talk about our history. Our history that goes back over 10,000 years. 15,000 years, as stated by Greg White, 16,000. That's our history. That's what we have here. And it's here within these soils. Throughout the city, we have little representation. You don't really find anything that says Koi, that says anything about our tribe here, about Elam. No, there's very little everywhere you go, and there's names that are all over the city. Let's talk about Anderson Marsh, a state park that was purchased because of the Native American archaeological sites that are there. That's what it was purchased for. But yet it's called Anderson Marsh. You go out to those trails, it's called, you got the trails, you got Anderson Flat, you got Lewis Ridge, Slater Island. These are all names of people that's been here, of the Slaters, of the Andersons. But we don't talk about the traditional names. We don't talk about, how we called Cache Creek, Badai, or we called the island Yo, or Koi Island. Today we know it is Indian Island, but it's Koi Island. That was our center. That was our political center. These are the real names. But if you go around, you see Austin Park. If you go around the county, you see Kelseyville. And right now, what we're talking about is the Burns Valley complex, sports complex. A relative came here last week, and he told the history of that. He told the history of who Bern Brown really was, about him indenturing his grandma. That's the name that you guys are putting on this. That is who that is. That's what's related to that. Just like with Kelsey. I have family members that carry that name as well. There's Kelsey's, there's Salvador's. Clifford Salvador, that was on Badai. He carried that name. His father was kidnapped, and he was gone for 25 years in the Bay Area before he came back. This is the history that we have. My great-grandfather took part of going to the gold mines. He was one of the few that made it back. That Ben Kelsey and them, they took him on that. That's our history, and that's what we're trying to protect. So, I heard something in the last meeting was we're doing our part. With the misunderstanding that we had, we thought we were talking about the surveying. That we would be willing to go over there and survey the top layer after the disking that took place. That's what we thought we were talking about. But, you know, it's somebody said that we did our part by covering that cost, and now we could get our name on there. If we want a name, now we could get our name. Our history, my ancestors, they already paid that price. Us getting chased off these lands, Cool Badai and Cool Koi, off of Badai, on down road, them getting chased out by Paul Lewis, Lewis Ridge, Paul Lewis, all these names, Slater Island. We were chased off of these lands. I kind of think that we already paid the price. And all we're asking is to be a part of this, to continue being part of this. We were already part of it throughout the whole beginning. Let's finish it off. Let's be the example for everybody that's watching. And let's not continue this. Let's not continue continue what this county has already been through. I heard that there's a book that tells of what not to do. This is what you don't do. A relative passed not too long ago from Sulphur Bank, from cancer. How many people have died from cancer in that area? You know, this is what we're facing, historical trauma. I see it all the time. I deal with it. I deal with it with my own kids, my own family. And this is proven, this is scientifically proven, that historical trauma gets passed down, and that's what we're dealing with. You know, we're still dealing with it. It wasn't that long ago. It may seem like a lifetime and forever. It really wasn't that long ago. But I just wanted to say those few things, and you know, just to let everybody here know, you know, why we're here. We're here. We're not asking for much. This is a multi-million-dollar project. This is one of the biggest projects that you guys have done here. You know, so Greg saying how extensive his work was, it makes sense. It makes sense. I've worked with Greg side by side for many years, and I learned a lot from him. And one thing I did want to bring up is he said those sites are between 3,000 and 5,000 years old. And from my understanding, he's been looking for that time frame from 4,000 to 6,000 years throughout the world. There's a missing piece that we've been trying to find as humans that fit in this timeline of what he's saying this timeline is for that site. And it's not easy to find sites. He may have dug a lot of holes, but there's a lot of ground there. We just want to be able to be there and pick up the pieces. That's all we're doing. We're not trying to stop you guys from anything, but we're picking up the pieces of what's going to be left behind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for that powerful and personal testimony. So that's what we mean when we're talking about oral history. He knows his history, right? And he's living it right now. And you all are part of history too, right? Someday this will be history. So I want to take what Rob was talking about and lay the groundwork for what Robert Geary is going to share with you, put this in an environmental justice context. So I'm going to start with the definition of environmental justice in State Law Government Code 65042.12, subdivision E, for those of you following along at home. So the definition of environmental justice. Under state law, environmental justice means the fair treatment of people of all races, cultures, and income with respect to the development, this is a development, adoption, implementation, this is implementation of a development, and enforcement, certainly an issue here, of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So what does that mean in practice to enforcement agencies? So this means that when the city applies CEQA, which is an implementation of the city's general plan, which has an environmental justice requirement in it from the governor's planning of, excuse me, it's been a long night, from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, where I used to work and worked on these general plan guidelines. It requires environmental justice consideration by local governments. There's actually large amounts of grant funding available for environmental justice communities and communities doing EJ work. Your city manager is very talented at bringing in grants, so this is actually an opportunity potentially. So when the city is making its decisions, we would urge you to consider an environmental justice lens to your planning decisions, including development and implementation of environmental laws such as CEQA that says you've got to treat the tribe fairly. So, taken from the Attorney General's Office of Environmental Justice website, quote, CEQA requires government agencies in California to consider potentially significant environmental impacts on communities already burdened by pollution when reviewing and permitting new projects. So when we talk about pollution, there's, the mine, right? That's a good example. There are other types of environmental harm. One of the types of environmental harm is cultural harm, religious harm. So when we talk about sites have been bulldozed, and then you've got this archaeological report that says, oh, don't worry, there's no site here, I would refer you to page 6 of the memo provided by your CEQA attorney last week, which talks about Dr. White's report, which in turn talks about the Pomo School. So here, I'm just going to draw all these threads together for you. The Pomo School site is a significant site. We're talking burials. We're talking human remains. We're talking evidence, right? Indisputable evidence. City Hall, where we are now, used to be a shopping center. And what was it before that? A significant tribal cultural resource site. And your own expert's report says that cultural materials, this was in actually the additional materials received last week, cultural materials from both those sites are on this site. So when we're talking about the buffer zone, right, the city has already agreed to cap what the archaeologist says is an intact cultural resources. Thank you. That's a change to the project. We appreciate it. But the tribe's saying that they agree that the project redesign is better than the old design? Yeah, we do, right? That doesn't mean that all tribal cultural resources have been fully identified. It does not mean that they have been fully mitigated in a culturally appropriate manner as required by AB 52. So we've talked before, multiple hearings, about the need for tribal monitoring outside of this buffer zone of the area that archaeologists think is most important. Here's why. Those cultural materials, which our own expert says came from the Pomo School site, came from this very earth we're on now. Those are on this project site. There are tribal cultural resources at the surface level. We found them. They're documented with photographs in our expert's report. And so, as Rob was saying, they just want to be there to pick up the pieces. So we have this legacy of tribal cultural resources being desecrated through development. And I want to acknowledge those aren't decisions you all made, right? They may have been, some of us, our relatives generations ago, but you didn't do it, not personally. So, we're not saying you did anything wrong. We're saying, as you said, Mr. Mayor, as the trier of fact, right? You're now in a decision-making role. You do have authority now. And the question is, what are you going to do with it, right? We cannot fix the wrongs of the past. We cannot go back and heal genocide. But we can take an environmental justice approach and a healing approach to the decisions we make now, today as a community. So the city is still saying, including in the documents we received last week, there's no TCR impact because they're not intact, and therefore they're not significant. But what that memo fails to do is quote the rest of that very same sentence in the statute that says, when the city applies those historic register criteria, you take into account the significance of the resource to the tribe. And we're here telling you as clearly as we can, this is a significant resource to the tribe. Those cultural materials that have been redeposited on this site, that still means something. It still matters to them if there could be human remains in there, as your expert's report says. So an environmental justice approach here says the city takes into account the historic cumulative impact and considers the value of these resources to the tribe. What this tribe wants, it's far more humble than what most tribes are asking for around the state. I know, because I represent other tribes. You would not want to see me in that context. But I defer to the tribal council. And what they want is to be at the table for a respectful, meaningful consultation on tribal cultural resources. We tried. Y'all came back to the table. Thank you for that. We didn't quite get there. I think we will in future projects, I hope. And to be there on the construction site to monitor, so again, they can pick up the pieces and just move those TCR out of the way to a reburial location, and then your project can continue. So the tribe does support healthy recreation in the community. Wellness is a big focus of Dino Beltran in particular. It just shouldn't come at the expense of continued desecration. So back in the day, those sites were desecrated, and their materials got moved here. And so now that's the question for you. Are you gonna keep going? Are you gonna double down on what happened in the past that's painful to this tribe's culture and their religion, and it's causing environmental justice harm? Or are you gonna make a new decision, right? Take a new path, and you have that opportunity.
Good evening, Mr. Gary.
Hakate mai okate ken so weekend Robert Gary Yahake Alembak. How are you today? My name is Robert Gary and I'm from Alem Yahake Tawalkit Khoi Nation Yahake Habemetal. I work for Habemetal and Khoi. So I'm talking to you today, I think, with regards for more understanding, I think, of what this issue really causes. We're looking at an environmental justice issue and a social justice issue. When it came to this to this project specifically, talking with the city construction manager, the importance of it, where its location was, there were big concerns. I followed AB 52 consultation process and regulation, was asked about any concerns, and we consulted. During that consultation with both two representatives that we had at that, I let them know that we did have concerns. We consulted. At that time, we told them that we wanted monitors out on site. Phase 1 started. We had projects for the Burns Valley Phase 1 portion of it. Found items outside of the buffer zone, probably at the most farthest extent from the buffer zone, found items. And so with that said, consultation was talking about the project's entirety. We didn't have a monitor agreement set in place. This was something that was held up at the city manager's position, that he was taking a look. We have this all in the documentation that is being provided to you. So one of the things is just to make sure and know that items were found. We have monitored this project out of the buffer zone. We did find items. There is an invoice. We did training. All of this had already happened. And so we wanted to provide that information and letting you know that it was there. Obviously, if it's even okay to monitor if someone else is going to pick up this bill. That's the take on this. The tribe is there to make sure that it follows CEQA. Under environmental justice, to make sure that the process is followed, to make sure that we're consistently making sure that the tribal cultural resources are protected. And that's what we did on the first portion of it. Didn't stop it. We were there. It got completed. Second phase comes in. We can do the same. One of the things that we discussed in consultation was just the sensitivity of it. Not only that things were found, not only that we had Dr. White's report of everything that he brought back to the table, but also the new things that he himself found in his survey. And this made it even more concerning. And so this is the reason why that the tribe is coming back and saying we need to be out there to be able to move those. The operators, they're not trained to know what to look for. The contracted archaeologist is not going to be on site. So this becomes an issue, an environmental issue, because tribal cultural resources are a part of the environment. Discussed in consultation. So we're talking about cultural material, sensitive cultural material. And we're talking in what was presented at the last meeting about the archaeological sites or redeposited soils from other sensitive sites. From here, there were two that were done by, I believe, Malden, which Dr. White referred to last week, his report. And then Dr. White came out and actually did an update and expanded the actual sensitivity of an archaeological site. In that report, it talks about the sensitivity of what's there. It talks about the possibility of human remains in the soil. It talks about not knowing, but the integrity of what was in the soil of this area, of the soil that was taken possibly over to the sports complex. Then we talk about the Pomo School, soils that were taken from Pomo School and brought over into this area. Still highly sensitive material. When these materials are taken from one place to another and we're going to continue to go to that place, this is cumulative impacts. It's going to continue after time, project after project. It's not going to go away. These are social justice issues for the fact that this is not the only time, and this is a form of erasure, this is not the only time a form of erasure happened to this tribe. Back in 1957, there was a settlement that was down called Badai on the other side of the bridge over in Clearlake. There was a realtor who actually was arrested because he actually destroyed the houses of the tribal members that lived there. And there were burials next to their houses that were there. This was a known site. The realtor was actually interviewed, and his quote was that if they built their houses back, if he knew that they would have built their houses back, that he would have burned them, their houses down. But instead, he just ran a cable through the window and actually pulled it down with his truck. They were off. They were taken off. From that day to this, there's been no Khoi people back at that place, a form of erasure. Today, we're doing the same thing. When we're wiping out a cultural site, a sacred site, from all the evidence that I provided in consultation and in every one of these meetings about a tribal cultural landscape, tribal cultural resources that are on this area, that your contracted archaeologist has proven, that the information that I brought to the consultation has proven, and we're still going to go forward and erase the indigenous community. In where I ask, how does this affect us? It's a continuum of erasure. It's a justice issue for a race of people that were the first people that were here. And so these are the things that I'm asking that we change. Just like the attorney said earlier, that we're not blaming anyone here. This was before our time. It's our opportunity to make change, to follow new law that gives us the opportunity to save what footprint that we have left here in Lake County, and hopefully to establish a good working relationship and to see inclusion of the tribe that is originally from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well. Mr. Flora, do we have any information from the city? Oh.
Why don't you, we'll finish all the public comment. To the extent there's anybody else who wants to make public comment.
Well, I was asked for 30 minutes and we're about almost at 40.
Right, but there may be non-Khoi members who want to make public comment.
Understood. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Up here, my name is Nav Gurm. I'm up here on behalf of Chronic, and here today to present additional substantial confidential evidence of tribal cultural resources at the sports complex site. A USB was provided to the city clerk with information that could not be included in this binder, and another copy of this USB of that USB is also in this binder again, but just wanted to submit additional substantial tribal cultural resources at the site. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is William Chisholm. I'm one of the council for the Khoi Nation, and I will make this very brief because I know our time is running down, if not out. We submitted to you today a letter, a supplemental letter, talking about what had been submitted last week. And I would just like to make 3 quick points with that, and certainly urge you to read that as well as the supplemental declaration by Mr. Geary. First, you received today from the city manager a list, the errata addendum. We've taken a look at that. There are laws under CEQA that if you do something beyond mere clarification, the M&D needs to be recirculated. This goes beyond that. The matters that are stated there are not just simply clarification. CEQA requires that it be recirculated before there's any adoption. If the council is prepared to move forward with adoption, as we've been told many times, the tribe submits that there really must be monitoring. And I would just point out, the city decides to build a project. They find that there are impacts to wildlife. They don't call the Sierra Club and say, we think there might be impacts to wildlife. If you want to mitigate it, come on, otherwise we're going to go forward with the project. That's essentially what the tribe's been told. There might be impacts to resources, but if you want to protect them, you've got to come on and deal with it, even though it's the city's project. We submit that's not appropriate or the way CEQA operates. We would submit that there, in all of this, is substantial evidence that there is the need for an EIR. Courts take a very liberal view of when an EIR is required in lieu of just a mitigated negative declaration, which has been presented here. And among other things, it's not your job to weigh the evidence when you're with a mitigated negative declaration. You only do that if there's an EIR. We're not at that point. And I would just point out, too, if you recall last week, sitting right over there was Dr. White. And Dr. White, in his rebuttal and his response to what the tribe has presented, and he's the expert the city relies upon, very forthrightly said, I'm an expert in archaeology, history, culture. I'm not a tribal resource expert. That's where you look to the members of the tribe to see what the tribe considers a tribal cultural resource. Not me, Dr. White. Not. So I would urge you, listen to the tribe, listen to what they have said, and listen to your own expert who said defer to the tribe. And also urge, if you're prepared to go forward, I just ask you to urge you and ask you to think how defensible you think your MND is going to be when your own expert has said, well, no, the tribe is the expert, not me. How valuable is it to rely, as has been done, on that expert? So I will just wrap this up very quickly and, again, indicate that we want the project to move forward, but it has to be done in compliance with CEQA. Short-circuiting CEQA is not the way to get the project done. It'll only cause more expense and delay, which isn't good for the community, it isn't good for the tribe, it isn't good for the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would agree that I think reasonable time to present the appeal, so I think now would be time to open it up to the rest of the public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. As our representative has recommended, if there's a member of the public who would like to speak to council on this item, you have 3 minutes. Please step forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Val Nixon. I'm not a member of the tribe. I am the president of the Lake County Land Trust. I'm not here representing the Land Trust. But the Land Trust itself hires monitors as we restore wetlands. We put it in our budget because we think it's the right thing to do. It's not that we're required to. So my hope is as you are changing ancestral lands, that you will find that the right thing to do would be to hire monitors from the tribe. Thank you.
My name is Tom Nixon, and I feel completely under duress tonight, looking at you gentlemen in your suits. Anyway, I want to tell you a story quickly. I won't take very long. Many years ago, when I was a ranger at Anderson Marsh State Historic Park, I had the privilege of working with a scout leader named Dick Freeborn, who we all know was one of the famous people of this county. And Dick said to me at that time, he said, I will never prosecute someone who finds an arrowhead at this park. And I go, wow, he said, no, finding an arrowhead is like mom apple pie and a girl next door. It's what everybody does. They just take arrowheads. And I go, well, okay, that's probably one of the reasons this park is here, is this old ranch house, this marsh, and protect these Indian sites here. So many, many years later, we had written a couple of citations finding people looting in the marsh, and I got a call from Judge Freeborn. He said, what do you want to do as a bail schedule? I got a case in front of me, and we have no bail for this particular looting of these ARC sites. And I said, well, Judge, I don't know, but I'll do this. I'll call Mendocino County and Sonoma County and find out what they do. And I'll call you back. So I called them both up, and one was more expensive than the other one for the bail. And I called Judge Freeborn back, and I said, I don't know what you want to do. This is Sonoma County, this is Mendocino County. Why don't we cut it down the middle and make Lake County this bail? And he said, sounds like a good one, Tom. And that's a big step from Judge Freeborn telling me that he would never prosecute anybody for arrowheads here, but then all of a sudden he's calling me to find out what we should set as the bail schedule for this particular offense. So we've made a lot of progress here. I have nothing but the complete respect for so many people up here that I already know and I've worked with over the years. Some of you I'm getting to work with more. But I also have a tremendous amount of respect for these people over here, the Koihi Nation. I've worked with a lot of different Native Americans in my career, and I found them to be pretty straightforward people. From what I'm hearing from Dino, they're not opposed to this project. They want to proceed. They just want to be part of the process. And part of the process is legitimizing compensation. So that's really what this is about. From my understanding, and I don't know the ins and outs, I got asked to be here a couple hours ago. So I've come before you on my way to kicking in the country in my shorts in front of all you with your suits on, and I'm telling you that this is about compensation as I agree. And I think you should pony up, and that's my 2 bits. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, staff. Erin McCarrick, Clearlake. So things obviously got off the rails at some point, right? And even coming in from an outside perspective, which is odd saying from an outside perspective as a planning commissioner in September 2022, but we were presented with this case that had been going on for quite some time, and it just seemed like there was a lot of different voices, a lot of things going on, right? So what does that mean for the present? That means cutting to the heart of what it is. And I think last Thursday, there was some miscommunication, but last Thursday still cut to the heart of what needed to happen. So there's still the opportunity for that. And we're in the present right now. And as you heard from the past speakers, is there's an opportunity here. And there's also the reality of AB 52 being here, and in reality, most likely expanding in the way that California tends to expand things like that. So we're here, and we're also in a place where we're doing community conversations, right? We're talking about diversity, inclusion, respect. I mean, the council is recognizing LGBTQ, which is near and dear to my heart. So how do we move forward? How do we become inclusive? How do we set the tone for all sides to come together and talk to each other? In the cannabis industry, there's the blessing and a curse of we have a lot of regulations. And one of those blessings is that we get to learn how to conserve more water, learn how to do best practices, reach out to the ag community and find out how to do those best practices. Supervisor Sabatier smashes us together all the time and says, figure it out, work together. So there's so many ways to work together. And in the cannabis industry, a lot of us, myself included, reach out, even if you're already cleared through CEQA, reach out to the tribes to get an additional monitoring to just triple check that there's nothing sacred there, right? And the tribe is more than happy to do that and very responsive. So if Clearlake is in a renaissance and it is doing a lot of good things, which it is, this is a great opportunity to show how to work together, find out what it is. If it is a budget thing, how much is it going to cost to do the monitoring? Is there a cost sharing? Is there, what is it? What is it that's there? I think it's a great way to set an example and to increase the conversation about who has been here, what tribes have been here. The splash pad integrates tribal imagery and consultation there. So, yeah, thank you so much for the time, and I hope that there is opportunity for growth. There's still a bit, 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Phil Harris, city of Clearlake for many years. I'm kind of back and forth now, but just wanted to give a little perspective from myself here. I've been very much involved in the promotion of the concept of the sports complex. I did coach for 15 years, and I developed a lot of really close relationships with the children over the years, and I see there's a desperate need for that. Obviously, this is where we came to the location where we are now. I've also been here, like I said, of 45 years. That location has been, manipulated many times over the years. There's no doubt about it. I've also been one of the stronger voices when I was on the council about the need for representation for the indigenous populations here. I think that's always been something that's been near and dear to my heart. Many of the children that I coached over the years were from the Elam colony, and they're still very, very dear to my heart. They always will be. I think that aside from the monitoring concept, definitely in being inclusive with naming the different components of the facility and maybe the fields on the facility, that should be some inclusion there. I firmly feel that there should be some inclusion there as far as some design ideas that would represent, and then possibly there would be even some contributions made from the community to support something like that. I know that my corporation would do that, and I think that others would as well, because it's very important that they're represented. But from the monitoring standpoint, I think that it was expressed the most by saying it's a form of compensation, and it does lean towards a cash grab kind of a concept. And if that's the purpose of it, is to represent the Koine Nation, I think that that's wonderful. And if there is a need to, a genuine need to have somebody on site for that, then that needs to be met. But if it's, just a kind of a compensation type of a way, I think that they could be more compensated in being well represented by the complex, and I think that they should be. They should be represented in everything we do in this community because it was their home first. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Flora.
Well, the only thing, I think the clerk received a comment from the school superintendent earlier that she wanted to share with the council. Would you want to read that, or you want me to?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Earlier, we received an emailed comment, a message of support for the Burns Valley Sports Complex and Recreation Center from Becky Salato. Mr. Mayor, council members, and city manager, on behalf of the Konocti Unified School Board, staff, and most importantly, students, I would like to express our support and gratitude for the Burns Valley Sports Complex and Recreation Center project. I understand it is a huge undertaking for our city, and I am extremely proud that as leaders of our community, you have the courage and progressive thinking to take on this project. It is clear evidence of your support for our youth and the healthy progress of our community. I truly appreciate your efforts of honoring and preserving our past without it being at the expense of our youth and future progress as a successful community. I look forward to a continued partnership with the city in support of our youth and the many positive opportunities the Sports Complex and Recreation Center will bring for our students. Signed, Becky Salato.
Okay, excuse me. I guess just kind of kick it back to the council. I mean, our council is on Zoom, and if you have any questions about sort of the allegations around obligation for recirculation of the document. and that
Yeah, I
type
would
of
like to
thing,
hear about that,
he
Mr.
can
Flora.
address those for you. We'd like to start there.
Yes, please, let's start there. No.
Sure, this is Andrew, oh, go ahead. This is Andrew Scanchi with Danny Brand. So I'll respond to the comment letter that was submitted this afternoon from the tribe. The three main points, one was the recirculation of the mitigated negative declaration. On that one, the allegation is that these measures were done to reduce potentially significant impacts. That's why they were added. I disagree. All of the measures that were added were to strengthen the project. They were not needed to reduce significant impacts. They were added to further ensure the impacts would be less than significant, but the impacts would still be less than significant without those mitigation measures. Therefore, recirculation would not be required. Another point in that letter was that NEPA, the city needed to comply with NEPA, that's the National Environmental Policy Act. We responded to that last time, but the short response is that NEPA is something that federal agencies comply with, not state agencies. So the city would not be an agency approving a NEPA document. And then I guess the other point made in that letter, which was mostly highlighted in the testimony today, is tribal cultural resources. And I can, if you'd like, I can just remind you of the definition of tribal cultural resource in the statute. The main point being a tribal cultural resource is a resource determined by the lead agency, that's the city here, in its discretion and supported by substantial evidence to be significant pursuant to criteria set forth in subdivision C of section 5024.1. That section talks about what qualifies as a historical resource in California. And then that section goes on to say, in applying the criteria set forth in that section, for the purposes of this paragraph, the lead agency shall consider the significance of the resource to a California Native American tribe. So again, the standard is the lead agency has discretion to make that determination, and it is based on the standards for a historical resource in the state of California with consideration of the tribe's the significance of the resource to the Native American tribe. Those are the main points. I'm happy to answer other questions for you.
Thank you. Any questions for council? Seeing none. Mr. Flora or Mr. Jones, anything further?
I mean, I don't think so unless, I mean, it's my, listening to some of the comments from the public, I mean, clearly there's not a real deep understanding on what mitigation measures are actually in the CEQA document. I mean, it sounds like there's an assumption that this project doesn't include any tribal monitoring, which it does. And of course, there's a cap and fill of the sites to avoid any impacts at all, so that's the most important part here. But, you know, I know the council knows because we've been through this. You know, this project started 2.5 years ago, started immediately with communication and consultation with the tribe back then. But if there's anything that you feel like we need to go over again or whatever, just let us know.
Vice Mayor.
City Manager Flora, could you also just remind us on the conditions of approval? Because I think that came up a little bit in conversation here, and I think that has been addressed.
Yeah, I mean, there were several conditions of approval, or there are, you know, so the process in CEQA, we do the mitigation measures, which are intended to reduce any potential impacts to less than significant. Those are also included in conditions of approval for a project. there were some additional conditions of approval that were added for this project after consultation, I guess, back in October of last year, that we didn't believe were related to an environmental impact, but had agreed to do. And so, I mean, naming came up a number of times this evening, and so one of those conditions simply says that we will organize an item for the city council to consider naming related to this project. So there's several other ones, but that's the main one that seemed like it came up. And so that is included as part of the recommendations around this project, but not, you know, it's not a, we don't believe under CEQA it's mitigating environmental impact, but something that the council could choose to do if they would like. So.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. And for clarity, and because, you know, the city didn't present this evening, we presented in the previous meeting. Would you take a couple of minutes, please, and just give a high-level overview or summary of the project, what tribal resources we have used for monitoring, or what monitoring we've done in the project, and that I believe our staff has been trained to look for tribal cultural resources, which is evident in other projects where we've identified things and immediately called when those artifacts were identified. Just, I think for those here tonight and answer some questions of those who spoke.
Yeah, well, I'll
I know.
So, I mean, we look at the mitigation measures related to this project in several layers. So, you know, this is a project where there are tribal cultural resources on this site. You know, there were a number of reports over the years about different things being there. And so, you know, that's why within a few weeks of actually purchasing this property, we worked with Dr. White to begin his cultural resources survey. And so 2 sites were identified at this location. Those 2 sites, according to Dr. White's analysis, were, I think he characterizes like sort of temporary housing sites. So these weren't permanent village sites, but along, I think, some of the creek area that maybe used to be there, that type of thing. And those sites are buried between 18 and 24 inches below the existing surface. And so we, once we got that information, you know, we worked that into the design. So the design of the project, I guess you did ask for that. So just the high-level overview. This would be a replacement of the 3 baseball and softball fields that are currently at Redbud Parks. There would be those, soccer fields, and then an indoor recreation center, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 square feet. And then there's also the city's public works shop, and that facility would include some police evidence storage. So those are kind of the parts of this project that are included. So that was all redesigned so that we could ensure that we would cap the with culturally sterile soil above the elevation that's there now at least 6 inches. There would be no penetrations below the existing grade. No, I mean, even tree plantings and that type of thing would not happen above these sites. Now, you'll recall that, so that was kind of the initial mitigation measure proposal that was recommended. Through further consultation with the tribe, there was some feeling that maybe this was one larger site rather than 2 smaller sites. Dr. White is adamant that he doesn't believe that's true. There were a number of ground probes that happened in the area that with with the Koi's involvement, including between those two sites, was trenched, and there was no evidence of any intact buried deposits in that area. However, in an effort to accommodate the tribe's concerns, well, I should step back. Even the tribe has acknowledged that, avoiding impacts is the most important thing, and avoidance, of course, is the sort of, highest priority under CEQA as well. And so capping and filling the site, really meets that standard. But we know there's the concern, so we agreed to providing monitoring for placement of the fabric and the cap, and any work above those sites, and a 100-foot radius around the border of those sites. So then we further agreed, based on the tribe's concerns, to include tribal monitoring of the area between the two sites. So, and then there was also concerns, there used to be a creek commonly referred to as Miller Creek that doesn't exist on this site anymore. However, because of concerns related to possible connection to that we would provide monitoring along the creek. The 100-foot area is kind of the standard that we've used over the years in that. But and while there has been, an arrowhead or a piece of obsidian found on the surface in that area, as you all know, this is very common throughout Lake County. And we have no evidence, we believe, presented that there's any intact deposits any other areas of the site. And so that's why the recommendation up until this point has been to just provide for monitoring in those areas which we would believe the facts support are sensitive. So I don't know, I guess.
Thank you very much. No, you did.
Well, Mayor, before there's more back and forth questions with staff, I think maybe appropriate time to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Have a motion?
So moved. I'll second it.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Overton, a second by Councilmember Slotin. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Motion passes. Mr. Slotin, any questions?
Yeah, I want to make a couple of comments. Just like our city manager said, the obsidian and some were found on the bigger site, but if I remember what Dr. White said, they don't have any integrity, and that would be the standard that you would use. When did we actually started with consultation with the COI?
Well, official notice of consultation happened in, I believe, March of, I probably should go look at the list of dates, but it was 2.5 years ago that we purchased the property. And so while this doesn't qualify as AB 52 consultation, we did a contract with Dr. White, and then he did his trenching, which included COI participation in all that activity. And so, but I mean, the process has been 2.5 years, and we started immediately because Vice Chair Beltran, as soon as he found out that we had purchased the property, called me and said, we have some concerns because there's reports of burial in this location and all that. And so that's something that was passed along to Dr. White, and he analyzed it, and, as part of the report, and his survey didn't find any evidence of that, but.
Also, what, if I recall, Dr. White also mentioned that the big pile of dirt that's on the east side of the property, that it was not identified where that actually came from, if I remember correctly. Is that?
Well, I think he surmised about some possible locations based on other stuff, but
never confirmed that it came from.
I mean, I don't know how you would prove it for sure, but.
I find it interesting. I mean, obviously, environmental and social justice is a topic nowadays, but I find it interesting that only today the Koy Nation brought it up. Just a comment. And another part is, the desire of the Koy Nation to inspect these piles. If you have any cost that it would, based on the knowledge of how much it costs to or what the way the Koy Nation wants to look at the piles at the splash pad, how much money that would cost? Do you have any number on that?
I don't. I mean, we do have a proposal from Dr. White on that part of it, and we have done some analysis on other projects, but we haven't asked him to analyze, like you're talking about, if the pile that's there of
Right.
the redeposited material from wherever, if we were to screen all of that.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that
Because
specifically.
that's probably exceeds the cost of the sports complex to start with, I assume.
It's going to be significant, yeah.
We've closed the public hearing. Ma'am, thank you. Any other questions, Councilman Kramer?
Questions so much as comments. Last Wednesday, not Thursday, at our special council meeting.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Thank you, you corrected me.
When this started, this hearing started. Of course, Chairman Beltran was here, not Vice Chairman Beltran, and unfortunately, he's not here tonight.
Actually, he's here.
Oh, he's there. All right, you're back there. When I asked the question, would you be willing to do the monitoring at your cost? And I went back several times to make it very clear what I was asking, so there wouldn't be a misunderstanding. In fact, I think we probably have that on tape somewhere. We could go back and replay it. But it was asked, and there was, as far as I can see, there was understanding what we were talking about, and what we are asking. And we're not, if we don't see the evidence that you apparently do on the surface. I see this, you keep referring to the disturbance of the soils by the disking that we did for fire protection in a city that's had at least half a dozen fires in the last 2 weeks in the city limits in Grass. So that was done for safety, and we would continue to do that. But more importantly, cultivation of that property has happened continuously over the last 100 years. And to say that we disturbed this, the city disturbed this in this action for fire safety for our city that's lost substantial properties to wildland fires is just, in my opinion, ridiculous. But we did reach out to you. We asked to try to get to a happy medium here. This monitoring that you want the city to do at our expense, that from the voluminous information that we've gotten, that you out there sitting, maybe this side of the table of the aisle has heard some of it, but you haven't. You haven't heard everything that we've read and everything that we've studied. So when you make those comments, you gotta realize that we hear and have a lot more information on this than you have out there. But I would quite honestly, I'm somewhat, I shouldn't say I'm shocked, because in our dealings, I could see it's happened before. But we explained last Wednesday, I am sure, and again, I can see it, if we wanted to replay the tapes, that there was no misunderstanding on what I asked and what Mr. Beltran agreed to. So something happened over the weekend or over the ensuing 3 or 4 days, that's what happened. But I don't see a requirement, based on all the information I have here, for the city to pay for the monitoring outside of those site areas, which we agree to pay for, that have been identified by scientific and study. And I wouldn't disagree that that you might find something across that other 25 or 27 acres. It's all over, as Mr. Flores said, you can find arrowheads or obsidian parts that could be tools. I mean, they're all over. There's no question about it. But that's different than the deeper evidence of cultural resources that would drive us to make a decision to pay for this, which is really not going to be cheap. This city is stretching to build this sports complex. A sports complex is going to benefit all of us and all of your people, your folks as well, the Coys, the Limbs. It's going to benefit everybody. And we're stretching to make this thing work. And we're asking that you also stretch a little bit more to help us make that work. You want us to give everything in, and you don't want to, you say you want this to happen, but your actions are not showing me that. And that's about all I have to say.
Councilmember Overton.
Thank you, Councilmember Kramer. Some of those I could reiterate, but I won't. So I have a few questions. When Dr. White went out with the COI to do the survey, who was the one who went with him? Who was the ones that went out with as the monitors?
Address it to Alan.
They're not here. Okay.
Address your questions to the city manager, please.
So who was that? So, do we know?
Well, I can pull up the report and.
But they're not here, anyway. So I guess, because my question is they went out and spent 2 days out there with him. I mean, that was what was told to us last week, right? And so they had 2 days to walk around this property, and they really found nothing significant that they reported. So I'm not quite sure why we're even here on the issue. You guys went out with him, you spent 2 days with him, walking around, doing all these things. Dr. Parker, I'm sorry, you brought us this book that had these proofs. To me, that wasn't proof at all. He never had permission to be there. He had never had any witnesses. And I've actually personally seen him make these items, so I can't really take what he says when he doesn't let anybody else go with him. It seems like every time he wants to go look at something, he never waits for our staff. So I just really have a hard time dealing with his reports on a significant matter. It looks like to me we have changed a ton of things for here, you guys. We have went out of our way. We have laws that we have to follow, just by you guys that haven't been here through all this stuff. We have CEQA laws we have to follow. We have AB 52 that we have to follow. If we come across anything that is even slightly, significant, we have to stop the project and we have to call them in. So there's never not going to be if something happens, they're going to be called. We had to do it on Mullen, we've done it before on all of our projects. So where you say we don't respect or include you guys in our project, I want you to look at our logo. Our logo, we went out of our way to make sure the Thule boat and some kind of a symbol up there that hopefully you guys felt like represented you guys. I mean, we sat on the committee to make sure that happened. So I didn't really appreciate when you said we don't care about your resources. We care very much. Since I've sat on city council, when I first began 18 and some years ago, I fought for every tribe to have a place on every committee that I sat on. So to me, saying that to me was just pretty devastating, like you think is devastating to you on your culture. What you said about us not caring was pretty devastating to me, because I feel like we have went way and beyond what was absolutely necessary. I also went back and watched the Planning Commission meeting. Why did this not get stopped there if you had such concerns? To me, why did you not stop it there? You got up and said, hey, all good. All good. I sat and watched it, rewound it, went back and watched it. It was all good. So I'm not quite sure. Everything we've done, all the paperwork we've changed and tried to work our very best with you guys in every way. And you're saying we're not, but we have. We have went out of our way, above and beyond, I feel, to make everything that we could. Paying for a monitor, one, the project wouldn't even go through. We could never afford, you guys don't realize how much monitoring costs, what they want to charge. We would not be able to do the project if we had to have a monitor there, every bit of that project. It would never fail. Don't we want a baseball field? Don't we want these things to happen? We have offered to let them come and be the monitor on the areas that have been specified, with them being there, by the way. They were there when this happened. So, you know, they were included in it, you know, so I think that we went way beyond, and I want you guys to understand that we have done that, because they're acting like we haven't, but we have. You know, we have went way above. They were there through all of the process. They were there when these places were designated out. We've offered to cap them. We've even offered to go above and beyond what we actually had to do. And so I feel like we've changed our documents for them. We're going to train our people before they do anything. So to me, this project just needs to move forward. And I'm sorry if you guys don't feel that way, but I feel like we really went out of our way for you guys. And I don't think there's any give anymore.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to say, everyone who came up today to give testimony, thank you. I know that's difficult, and it was very compelling. I'm also glad we got some clarity. I know this was covered last time, but from the city on how we've been responsive to issues and really have come back with some extensive mitigation measures. One of the gentlemen who came up said, be the example for everyone who's watching, and I think we are. This is the most we've added to a city-run project, as far as I know. And it shows a lot of progress, and I really appreciate city staff. I appreciate the COI for helping us add some of this rigor to our processes. I think everyone has said that we have gone pretty far on this, and yes, there's a difference in opinion on have we gone far enough, have we gone too far. I can appreciate that, but I do appreciate everyone involved. I think a few council members said this, and someone mentioned that this is a multi-million-dollar project. No one's making money off of this project. This is a park. This is something where we have businesses, we have service organizations, we have individuals volunteering their time, donating to, trying to figure out ways to make this happen. I can appreciate the sensitivities around this, and that's why I was really vocal about including the new verbiage for TCR 4. You know, if you want to be here to pick up the pieces, I agree with that, and I want you to be there as well. I believe our mitigations are sufficient. If there's a difference of opinion, you're welcome to be there. So I guess to quote another person who came up, to cut to the heart of the matter, does this meet AB 52 standards? I believe it does. I believe these mitigation measures are sufficient, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this on both sides, and I hope that we can move forward with this and have a great space that we can all enjoy.
Any other comments? Mr. Fleur, one of the challenges or allegations was that our staff is not trained in AB 52. Is that accurate?
Well, staff involved, or, our planning staff have received a number of trainings in AB 52. I mean, this isn't this was initiated back in 2015.
Right.
It's been around for a little while now. I think, so a couple of years ago, we, several of us participated in AB 52 training that was held by the Bimatol tribe, and we even had some representatives from our police department there. I attended personally. I know some of our planners who used to work for the county had training there. More recently, we have Lisa Westwood we've hired to sort of help make our process a little more precise, and she's provided a 3-hour training to all of our planning staff. I attended that as well, Miss Leba. But it's a continued concern from the tribe, so we have been putting together details on additional training that will be open to the public, including members of the city council, planning commission, other agencies. I think there's always additional things that we can learn. I mean, with Miss Westwood's guidance, we've adopted a number of additional forms and whatnot to be more clear and track the process and timelines. It's a little different on this type of project, but, private development project, we also have a responsibility under the Permit Streamlining Act to respond to some of these things in a certain time period. And as some of you have been involved in development before would understand that a lot of development projects that take 2.5 years to get to this point just, wouldn't happen. But anyway, we've put a lot of new things in place to make sure that there's more clarity for staff on what our responsibility is, be more transparent with the tribe. And like, for example, this project, when we went back and did additional consultation meetings, we formally ended consultation with a very detailed letter. That's one of the things, if you're not in agreement, you can end consultation. That was the first time that we've provided that type of response. So I don't know, I could go on and on, but I'm just trying to provide a little bit of color of some of the things.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, they've been trained, yes.
Also, is it the city's process to obtain bids, to go out to RFP, to find the best resources and pricing for work to be done in all capacities, whether it be HVAC or electrical work, paving work, anything like that that would take place in the city?
Yes, we do.
Because we're required to by law. Have we also investigated different price ranging for tribal monitoring of business sites, or building sites?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, we're familiar with what some of the other tribes charge and whatnot. So, yeah, there's a bit of variety out there.
Okay, and to drill down a little bit, I think, into one of Councilmember Slotin's comments, if we were requested to do screen sifting and things like this in an attempt to recover artifacts, wouldn't that cost in a project this size be astronomical?
Well, yeah, it certainly could be. And, that's something that, from our perspective on our obligation under the law, if we were to dig up an intact deposit, that's something that we would have to do. But right, yeah, the mitigation measures require that the project be, well, if human remains are discovered within 100 feet of that area, the project has to stop. Normally, if something is dug up, like, for example, if there's some soil that there's concern might be midden, which is related to potential human remains, we would stop in that area, have the archaeologists come out, call the tribe, and work through that process on whether we're going to move forward or how we have to adapt from there.
And to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, we've been absolutely consistent in that and forthright in our reporting whenever a site has been identified.
Yeah, I'm not aware of an issue since I've been here where we discovered something and, didn't immediately contact the tribe.
Of course. Any other comments? All right, I'll bring it back to council.
Just as a general comment, everybody says this is a unique opportunity for the city of Clearlake to put health first. We're going to have an amazing sports complex that's going to have tremendous health benefits to the community. If you look at all the statistics about health in the county or in the state, Lake County is one of the worst because we don't have these kind of facilities. So this is, for a health concern, a very major project that we need to proceed on. And there are issues. There will be issues. But I think we need to move forward with this.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Just a final comment that came to mind. I absolutely agree. People deserve to be paid a wage, to be compensated for a profession or for specific education they've received. I absolutely believe that. But I also believe in community. And I'm sorry that Mr. Harris left, because he's been very gracious in providing funding and materials and equipment, and even his own professional services when we needed to heat and cool our animal shelter. I come from a family who volunteered significantly in building projects. I've poured a lot of concrete and helped the city all gratis for free, so children could have a better place to play. I know that we've got police officers who donate their time, either in uniform or out of uniform, again, to help our community. And it's that community coming together to reach the common good. What's going to be good for our kids? What's going to be good for the future of all of us, Indigenous and the rest of us. I have a great respect and admiration for our tribal members. I grew up with them. We've been friends for a lifetime for me. So this is something that is very important, and I want to make sure that we do get it right. But at a point, I almost feel as though we're being accused of violations that we've worked really hard to try to mitigate, overcome. As Councilmember Overton pointed out, we've changed the design, and we're looking at capping and filling rather than any earth intrusions, again, to preserve the resources that haven't been identified on the site. I guess what I'm looking at is, I mentioned in our meeting with Chairman Beltran and Vice Chairman Beltran, and other tribal members, that we had hoped to extend an olive branch so we could work together and invite you to the site to watch, and if something was available to recover, that you would be welcome to recover that. But we're talking about several acres, a large area that, frankly, our budget is stretched pretty thin just to get the project done and across the finish line. So just like any project you would do on your home, if you wanted to add HVAC or you wanted to extend a driveway, add a swimming pool, you've got to work within a budget, and that's what we're doing with this project. And we also have a responsibility to the taxpayers that we will do this at the best price, and I believe that's what we've done. We'll close for now, and Councilmember Slotin.
Yeah, I have one more comment. Like today, social justice and environmental justice came up, and inclusion and all those things are pretty dear to my heart. I had a conversation with Mr. Dino Beltran and talked about my two adopted kids who were from Guatemala, and I believe he has a connection to Guatemala. And they grew up in the city of Davis. And if you see how my two browner boys were treated compared to my blonde daughter, I know what it means. So don't think that I'm not aware of those kind of issues. Thank you.
Any other comments or as we deliberate? Vice Mayor? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution 2023-03, a resolution of the City Council of Clearlake denying application APCC 2023-01 and upholding the planning decisions of April 25th, 2023, approving the reference projects.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
think we need to clarify for the record whether this includes the initial mitigation measures or any of the amended ones.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
My motion would have the amended measures that were shared today.
I'll repeat my second.
I'm just going to briefly explain. The amended measure does have the TCR 4, among some other things, that speaks to the city shall invite Koi Nation in Northern California to participate in tribal monitoring during ground disturbance activities for the project area. The monitoring shall be required during ground disturbing activity within 50 feet of the known cultural resource locations and subterraneous cultural resources investigation. The monitor selected by the tribe shall be paid for monitoring of these sensitive locations during the ground disturbing activity. In addition, the Koi shall be allowed the opportunity to observe on an unpaid volunteer basis during ground disturbing activity on other non-sensitive areas of project site. I think that's what you read, Vice Mayor. I wanted to make sure that's the same language we're talking about.
Yes.
If I could bring up one thing, I didn't realize that this said within 50 feet of the known resource. What we had agreed to with the tribe was 100 feet.
Thank you.
I would recommend that that be correct.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my amendment to my motion to change TCR-4 from 50 feet to 100 feet.
Okay. I'll second that motion again.
So I have an amended motion, and I have a second to that amended motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye or nay if you're opposed. Madam Clerk?
Motion passes with unanimous vote of the council.
I just want to thank everyone. This is it was difficult. I just want to thank you all for being a part of the conversation, being a part of our community as we move along. Your voices are important to us, and we appreciate your time. Moving on to item 6, adoption of the Clearlake City's budget for fiscal year 2023-24. Mr. Flora, you wanted to?
I'll turn it over to Director Wells.
As the financial and policy implications of the fiscal year 2023-24 budget were discussed at the 5 p.m. budget session this evening, the council is being asked to adopt the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 budget by resolution 2023-27, which includes all components of the budget book and the fiscal year 2023-24 salary schedule.
Thank you. Any questions?
Look at the fee schedule.
I will open it up to the public for any comment on this item. Seeing no comment, any hand raised on the Zoom, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve or adopt resolution number 2023-27 of the City of Clear Lake's budget for the fiscal year 23-24.
A motion by Councilmember Kramer and a second by Councilmember Overton. All those in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry. I have to go use.
Aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Yeah, the suspense is gone.
Or opposed if you don't agree.
I don't know how that works.
I don't know what happened.
Okay.
I'm just going to say aye. Let's just move on.
Can